Welcome to No More Carbon Copies. It's the podcast for high-performing leaders with big goals who feel stuck trying to reach the next level. At Vivero Leadership, we believe no two leaders are the same. The best leaders perform at their highest when they understand what makes them unique and stop trying to lead like someone else. This is where we explore how to see ourselves clearly, address self-sabotage, and lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. You don't need to be a copy, you just need to be you. Welcome to No More Carbon Copies.
Welcome to a very special episode of the No More Carbon Copies podcast. Usually, you hear my guest as he sits here in his host chair sharing his insights on how to help leaders flourish. But today, we're flipping the script. I'm Julie Johnson, head of marketing here at Vivero Leadership. And as many of you know, I also happen to be Roger's wife. I've had a front row seat to the story we're about to share. Roger and I met almost 27 years ago. We ended up working together for about 3 years in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But that's another story for another day. In 2024, we launched Vivero Leadership, but not everyone knows how we got here. Before you were helping guide other leaders on their own path, you were stuck in a season of life when you were feeling overwhelmed and uncertain of what to do, but you knew you couldn't stay there. So when you think back, what was life like for you?
I would say I was employed to do really important things for a company that I really enjoyed working for. I kept on kind of acquiring responsibilities, managing people, I was managing projects, I was working with customers, we were bringing in revenue, created a new product development organization, and things were just kind of moving. But I found myself kind of stuck doing things that other people needed me to do that were important, but really sucked the joy right out of me. They were things that allowed me to have an income, feed my family. I would say I was making more money than I ever thought I was going to make in my life. And so there was this thing that really kind of kept me there. It was doing the things you have to do the next thing that needed to be done. You needed to renegotiate a contract. You did that. You manage a project and you did those things. You took on responsibilities of things that really I had no business managing, like outside of my expertise. I took on the leadership of 2 technical organizations. I don't know anything about technology, and it was like, hey, I could lead these things and I could do them, but they weren't in the things I really enjoyed. And the way that I found that out, and I think people who know me well, who worked with me closely, would know this, is that the thing that I enjoyed the most in my time there was the stuff I did off the side of my desk, the stuff I did that it wasn't the core to my responsibility. I was asked to develop and lead and serve as executive coach and manager of a executive leadership MBA program for a group of people from some top universities.
I really want to talk about like that season that led you to this point and why I think you do such a good job of leading other people through a season when they're feeling overwhelmed, unfulfilled, stuck in a role that they don't enjoy. And so, as I recall, that season didn't come overnight. It's not like you took a new job and it was a bad fit.
No.
There were a lot of years that led up to that point, doing what was expected. And I think, as you've said, running a race that other people set for you, that you would do whatever was asked of you, which is a really honorable, wonderful trait. But what did that do to you?
I work with some great people, some great leaders. When they come and they say they have a problem, they say, hey, I think you're the right person to lead this. Love for you to do it. You kind of, I feel flattered. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And I'll do it because they asked me to do it. And so I would say it was this kind of slow migration of a career into things that were good, but didn't fill me up. I didn't feel like I was very good at them. And I knew I wasn't an expert in them. I brought what I could bring to them, but it was definitely not stuff that I really enjoyed. And if you talk about the sweet spot, which is the intersection of what you're really good at and the value you create in the world and the joy and motivations that get you up in the morning to go do it. And I would say they were things I could do. They were in my competence and they brought value to the organization, but they didn't bring joy to me, except for the stuff I did with people and with leadership. So I think to be very clear with people is I did that for so long because it was easier to stay there because of avoiding change, good, steady income, a lot of good benefits, working with great people. All those things outweighed like, hey, this is not a good fit for me.
A lot of people think that it is a luxury to be able to do what you love and that, sometimes we just have to punch the clock. You have to go to work, do your
Yeah.
job, and then come home and enjoy your family. But I think we underestimate the toll that it can take on on ourselves as people, on our bodies, on our relationships. When you are not in a place where you are doing something that you enjoy, that you love, that you're good at, and having an impact, it does take a toll. And so I can talk about the effects that that stress was having on you at home. In particular, you struggled with awful migraines and
I
this
did.
definite underlying push and pull between knowing that you needed to perform at work, but then also feeling like you weren't enough as a husband and a father when you came home, that you couldn't fully be present and be the kind of husband and father that you wanted to be. But there was a specific moment that you had when you realized you had hit a wall that you couldn't overcome. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I want to come back to the idea of like seasons of life where you grind, because I don't exist in a world where everything's roses all the time. You just get to do whatever you want to do. That's not what I'm talking about. But I think this season of like extreme long term working kind of outside of my sweet spot, working with diminished joy, knowing that the things I love to do, I only could do off the side of my desk, and it wasn't the thing that people rewarded me for. It wasn't the thing that was filling up most of my day. And so I think gradually my body started feeling that. I wasn't sleeping. When I was sleeping, I was not sleeping very well. My migraines, I've struggled with migraines for a while, but they were manageable. And during this season, the migraines got progressively worse. But the weirdest thing was I started getting this sensation under my skin. It was a sensation that was kind of like, all I can say is it was like a electric chill underneath my skin. I always thought I was getting sick. And so it started, and I kind of was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then I was like, well, I'm not getting sick. And so I just kept pushing through and kept pushing through and kept pushing through. And it was about, I would say, it was like 4 or 5 months at least of these things getting worse and worse and worse. And I was working a ton. But even when I wasn't working, my mind was on other stuff. And I just reached the point where I just was, my level of hope, my level of joy, my level of engagement, even my level of proactivity. I was super responsive. In other words, people would ask me something, I'd do it, I'd respond to it, but I just had no energy, and started to feel like I wasn't even doing a good job at the things that I really enjoyed doing. My body was gradually giving me these clues of, this is not healthy. This is not good for you.
So what did you do?
Well, the first thing I did is I really thought I was dying. I don't talk about this a lot because I think people are going to think I'm being dramatic. But the reality is I did think I was dying. I thought I was sick. I lost some weight. I get emotional just thinking about it. It was awful. When I was driving to work one morning and I was like, I don't want to go any further. I do not want to go to work. I don't want to arrive at work. And it scared me to think I want out. And the only person I knew how to call, I just called, happens to be my brother, the doctor that I trust. And you know this stuff now, but I did not tell you. I did not talk to a lot of people about how I was feeling. I just pretended for a long time I was doing fine. And I remember I told Chris Brooks a few things, and I called Steve that morning, and I was like, man, I don't know. Something's not right. I really think there's something wrong with me. I've never been like this. And the short story is, after all kinds of blood tests and body scans and all kinds of stuff to figure out where was my sickness, what was wrong with me, my symptoms were consistent with all kinds of really bad things, to find out like there was nothing physically wrong. The only thing that was physically wrong with me was actually chemically wrong with me. And it was the result of having years of stress, and your body stops producing the chemicals you need for joy. And the actual tingling feeling underneath my skin was a result of the lack of certain things that your body creates. And when you don't have those, it actually physically affects you. But my doctors were very clear. This is a result of stress. Like your lack of joy, your physical symptoms of stress really are just your body saying, you can't run at the pace you're running. You can't do the things you're doing. This is not good for you.
Mm-hmm. And so you couldn't continue doing the job that you were doing, even though it was a great company, definitely like the golden handcuffs. We were enjoying a lot of financial freedom and spending and all kinds of things that we hadn't. We'd been in ministry at times and raised our own salaries. So this was like a totally different world that we were experiencing. But even even the financial success, the ability to go on vacations and do things, it didn't bring you real and true joy. I think that's a whole nother topic for another time. It Something had to change. And so back in 2024, we launched our business, and there were a lot of things going on at that time. It wasn't the best time in our family and our marriage to, leave a really stable, comfortable job and start your own business. We had one child that was getting ready to graduate from high school and go to college. And then we have three more right behind going to college just about every 2 years. So it was definitely a risk. For you, what was the scariest part?
I knew what I was good at. I knew what my sweet spot was, and I'd done the work, but I was so locked in and so scared to take the risk that when my body shut down, it was kind of like, okay, you didn't have the courage to do this on your own. Your body's going to shut down. Then you're going to go, okay, I got to make a change. I had gotten some very good feedback from people who had said, hey, you got to do this. You're really good at this. You look at my LinkedIn, I worked at Experian Health, and I had some great people I worked with. First of all, what I tried to do is I tried to say, how can I take this risk and do this without actually taking a risk? And so I was like, how can I do this inside the company? Just make that my job. And which wasn't fair to the company. It wasn't, and at the end of the day, it's not what the organization wants to do. And so the nice thing is people in the organization helped launch me out, and they're like, hey, we believe in you. You should go do this. So that was encouraging. And I had people outside who were saying, hey, yeah, we welcome you where you're a consultant and executive coaching because we want more of you on that side. So I didn't have that type of fear, but there was a sense of going from a W-2 employee with what looks like security to being a business owner where there is no revenue and there's no insurance and there's no any of that kind of stuff. That was super scary. And I think the thing is I knew what I was good at. I wasn't scared about that. What I was scared about is all the things that go around doing what I love to do that would allow the business to be created and allow those things to happen. And so, like, how do you sell yourself when you've never sold yourself? How do you tell people about what you do when what you like doing is just doing it in the room with executives and with leaders? And the whole sales part, the whole pricing part, I didn't have any of that experience. And so I think I was really scared and insecure because it was outside of my competence. What was inside my competence, I was super confident in. And two things are true. I wish I would have jumped out earlier. No doubt in my mind, I wish that was the case, but I wish I'd done it earlier. But if I would have known how hard it was, I probably wouldn't have done it. It's like there's a little bit of a good thing of not knowing. I wouldn't trade for the world.
I do want to back up and talk about why it wasn't as scary was because you were really clear on who Roger Johnson is and how you can be a gift to the people around you. And really that process that you went through that I want you to talk about is what has birthed our process in Vivero Leadership and how we help other leaders gain that. We call it humble confidence of, I know who I am, but I know who I am is meant to be given away. So talk about the process you went on and now that you take other leaders through.
I reached this point where I was doing the MBA leadership rotation program, and I loved it in every way. I liked working with the folks that were in the program. I liked working across the organization with other leaders, talking about the leadership development program, trying to develop this bench strength of MBA graduates who could lead, in the organization at a high level. Start out with just Vanderbilt, and then the UCLA, University of Chicago, one from University of North Carolina. But the idea is like, let's find people who really want to be in information technology and healthcare, who are coming out with their MBA, and then let's train them over 21 months. Let's invest in them to help them lead at a higher level and be the bench strength of leadership in our organization.
I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I tell people it was a little bit like a medical rotation where they got to experience different parts of the business and then really dive into one aspect and then get real-time feedback as they were doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a high visibility, high challenge, high development program, working on the most strategic projects of the organization. It was working for people at the senior level. So it wasn't in the bowels of the organization. We put them on strategic projects that were timely, various functional areas of the organization. It wasn't like, hey, you do the standard thing all the time so everybody had the same experience. It was really what's strategic right now. What does the organization need? Let's put one of these folks on there for 3 months and let's define the project and let's have them work on it. So high visibility, high challenge, and then high development, because we really gave them a lot of feedback along the way so that they were always learning and growing and developing in real time.
What do you
Yes.
think, what did you and Rachel think made it such a significant and successful program, both for the organization and for the MBAs?
Shout out to Rachel Eller. Loved working with her. Great partner. But I would say we married the idea of let's support these folks from an HR perspective, but from an operations perspective, let's really invest and engage in them. And so we developed things that didn't exist. And we developed some feedback sessions that didn't exist, projects that didn't exist. And we always did two things. At the end of every significant effort, we would gather in a room and they'd present their work. We'd always start with, what did they do well? Where did they kill it? What did they do that you just noticed they were so good at? And you would just see people just like sit up. They would like try to deflect, and you're like, you can't deflect. You're really good at this. And it's on all spectrums of leadership. So it wasn't about like just the like technical business stuff. It was all the stuff, the soft skills of leadership, influence and communication and conflict negotiation and managing really tough networks within an organization and managing resistance and presenting information in an executive manner that people could understand. We did all of that. I mean, and more. And then we would come back and go, hey, and let's breathe some life into how you can get better. So we didn't care about weaknesses. And I should have some on the podcast, they could talk about it. But the feedback that they got, they became so much more confident and clear about who they were. And then they could negotiate future roles, they could engage. And it was such a powerful thing. I was leading that program and loved it so much. I was like, man, I really love this. I wonder why I like it so much. I had no real insight into what made me uniquely effective. I was like, I don't like what makes me good. And so I went back and I interviewed people from different points in my life. I went back to talk to people who I worked with when I was in my 20s. I talked to people I worked with when I was in my 30s, and then 40s. And the thing was, these were all different seasons of life. I was a soccer coach, and then I worked in nonprofit leadership, and then I worked in a couple kind of weird roles when we first moved down to Tennessee, and then I worked in healthcare technology. I worked in product. I worked in quality, process improvement. I worked in client management. I worked in so many different things. And these people were people I worked with in all those different contexts. And I was just trying to ask them, like, hey, what feedback do you have for me about what you think I did really well? What experience did you have with me? And when I put all those interviews together, I invited a friend to help me digest that information. So Spencer Sessions, shout out to Spencer. And the amazing thing is no matter from the time I was in my 20s to the time I did that project, everyone talked about me the exact same way. They said, always invested in them. I always helped them become better, understand their gifts, and actually get better in their role. In coaching sports, that's kind of a given. Like you got to do that. But then when you move into actually corporate roles, that's a part of it, but not really. But everyone talked about, hey, I became better at my leadership. I became better at my job. I could manage conflict better. I could manage my career better. I believed in myself more. I could resolve complex challenges better. I could listen better. In so many ways, it was all about, hey, I became better as a result of working with you and engaging with you. And
I know you also found out the how, and I did some interviews on your behalf too as we were building the brand, and it was that there's equal parts challenge and encouragement with you, and they come with intensity. There's intense challenge and there's intense encouragement. Anyone who knows you're going to get both of those things. And if you don't want that, then he's not the person for you, because he's all in. He's your biggest fan, and he's going to believe in who you are until you believe it for yourself. That was one of the things that came out across the board as well.
Yeah, I love people, and I don't want to get emotional on here, but I love the people I work with. And I view it like a athletic coach. So when you're coaching someone in sports, you have to encourage them, but you also have to speak the truth to them. At the same time, you have to understand them and help them understand, how do you bring out the best in an athlete so they can perform. And so you have to have both challenge and encouragement. And so I just brought that same thing to my engagement with employees, my engagement with colleagues or whatever. It didn't matter whether they reported to me or not. I would just always I just naturally would kind of step towards people, encourage them, challenge them. And it was just this common theme that I wasn't just encouraging them and just kind of telling them platitudes, but I was willing to step in and say the hard things that needed to be said. And sometimes those hard things weren't, hey, I'm going to critique you. The hard thing was like, hey, you clearly don't believe you're as good as you are. Like, you're not listening to the fact that you're really good at this. X. And so you're not taking risks and challenges that you're not taking on things that you could take on. You can have a larger impact in the organization. And that's why I think when you hear that over and over again, I would say my style of executive coaching is not passive. To me, I think, no, you don't see yourself accurately. And my job is to help you see yourself accurately, and then let's go from there. And that project helped me understand, hey, this is true about me. I tried to apply that in my role. And as I became more and more aware that I wasn't doing as much of that, that's where the disconnect came in my role. And as my roles changed and evolved, I was like, man, I know I'm really good at this stuff, but I don't get an opportunity to do as much of it as I wanted to. And so that's where we got to that point where I was like, hey, something's got to change. I did not want to go start my own business. That wasn't what I was trying to do. I was trying to just get more joy out of my current role and stay where I was. And I tried, I think, for a long time to go, whatever. But when you hear it from people over and over and over again, you start to go, man, this is pretty consistent. And I felt so much joy. I was like, that's what I love to do. And then it was not only did I enjoy this, but they're talking about how much value they got from it. That was awesome. So the joy piece is really important, and the value created for others. And what I find is that when I don't know much about the person that I'm working with, there's value in the conversations, but it's not transformative. But when I know someone really, really, really well, almost better than they know themselves, I can hold up a mirror to them to say, this is what I know is true about you. My job is to help you believe that, and then make decisions about how you engage in leadership, how you manage your career, how you do things based on that. It becomes then this transformational thing, just like it was for me. The people who helped me walk through my season to go, you're really good at this. How do you structure your life to do more of that? And so for me, for various reasons, it took me a while to make that jump. But what I find is that as I'm working with executives, the problem is that people don't see themselves accurately. And so they respond to profiling tools like almost aspirationally. This is what I want to be true about me. Or they have so many negative voices that they respond in this, I'm not confident. I don't really like myself very much. The problem is the fact that the person doesn't see themselves accurately. And so they're trying to be like somebody else, like I was for years. I was trying to be Bill. I was trying to be this great salesperson. Or trying to squeeze yourself into a role that you want to be a certain type of leader, you want to make a certain amount of money, you want all those kind of things.
So before we talk too much about what you do, I wanted to introduce the RLID, the Real Leadership ID. And RLID is really the basis and the foundation that you build your coaching on, because it helps you get a much clearer picture of the leader.
Yeah, the process is a very simple process. And so I'll say, who are people that love you, that care about you, want the best for you, and who have watched you do work in a significant way? And I don't care when you worked with them. I don't care if you worked with them in high school or you worked with them when you're 65 years old. Doesn't matter to me. But when you identify those people, they've seen that person do real work and take on real challenges that matter to an organization. And when they interview them, the client, they trust what that person says is for their benefit. So then I do the interviews and I ask 6 standard questions. Then I catalog their responses. And the key thing I'm looking for here is not weaknesses. What I'm looking for is, what are the themes of leadership practice that they need to know? So what are the things that they do really well? And then what situations do they get in where those themes of leadership are diminished?
Give me an example of a theme that has come out, maybe from one of your clients that wouldn't mind sharing a theme.
Well, I won't give the names, but like one of the things they do really well is their notice of people. No matter where they are in the organization, no matter what their hierarchy is, they welcome and involve people in the organization. Really high collaboration. So not top down kind of dictatorial decision making, but really trying to bring in the people with the most wisdom about a certain issue. So no matter what the challenge was, they would go find the most important people who were closest to the issue, who had a lot of wisdom.
Give an example of someone who's highly collaborative and people around them value that aspect, but they notice that highly collaborative person sometimes does something that actually sabotages them. So give an example of what that might look like.
The way that they sabotage themselves, they would get the people in the room, they would make the decision and hand that decision off to someone who would execute. But then this leader would leave that meeting and then have more and more and more and more and more conversation with people who weren't in the meeting, and then come back and almost trump the decision of the people who are in the original conversation. And so the person who owned the project had to make an adjustment. The people who were in the original conversation felt like their points weren't valued. And so it created friction. It wasn't that it was wrong. It was that it created friction between a group of highly collaborative people when it didn't have to. If you're going to go get additional information after the original meeting, then what do you do with that? You got to bring it back to the group of people that were a part of the conversation in the first place, and then think it through and make sure that you're on the same page. So it's a subtle thing. You're really like highly collaborative, but you frustrate the tar out of your organization to the point that people don't want to be on your project.
The reality is that leader has really great motives and intentions. Blind spots are blind spots because we don't see them. We see through a very different lens than if you're able to zoom out and get other people's perspectives, see the situation from a new angle. We can say, oh, I can see how that's actually not helpful. But when we're on our own and we don't have the insight and the perspective from other people, we become very limited, and we do things out of our own motives, aspirations, intentions, goodwill that can actually not be helpful. And so what I love about the process is I think it honors the individual, saying, you're not bad. Your motives, your intentions, those things aren't bad, but sometimes they don't land the way that you intend them to. And most of us want that information. So one of the questions I ask sometimes to people who've gone through your process, I said, were you worried about the kind of information that was going to come out of this? Because I know I have talked with some people and they've said, I don't like getting feedback. Feedback is the F word. Like it usually means I'm going to be criticized, torn down, told why I'm not doing a good job. So I know there are people that are apprehensive about going through the process because they're afraid of hearing things that make them uncomfortable and make them feel like they're not enough. So talk about why that isn't the case, because I've never met anyone who's gone through the process who felt like a punching bag and felt really beat up and didn't like it. So why is that?
Sometimes they think they know everything and they don't think they have anything to learn. So they're like, I already know about myself. I'm a mature leader. I'm in my 60s. There's nothing I can learn from this. The other perspective is hey, I already don't think highly of myself. I don't want to get more people to validate that. The other thing is that they've had this experience of feedback, which has jaded them to really believing that people are going to give them useful information. So, because typical 360s, sometimes they don't really give good information. They're self-fulfilling prophecies, or they come from people you don't trust, and so you discount them. Or a lot of leaders, they're like, people say I'm good at this, and they just kind of brush it off. They diminish themselves for a variety of reasons. The reason I think this really works and why I've committed to this process is because every time what I see in the eyes of the people who I walk through it with is this sense of, oh my goodness, people see me at a detailed level that I didn't realize. I did not realize that people saw not these generalities, like a CFO who's like, oh, I'm good at finances, good at spreadsheets. Like who? Like that's not helpful, right? But people pay attention to you at a much more detailed level. And so people would go, oh my goodness, there's so much nuance in here that I didn't have before. And the other thing is that they realize it's not about them working on their weaknesses. It's about actually getting better and stronger and removing the friction and interference. And so the effort on the development side is much different. It becomes much more self-motivational. Oh man, I can be better at leading my team by making these small adjustments.
What happens is you take leaders through the RLID process, and then you come back and you present the findings to them. And in the end, it really highlights what their competencies are, the places where they're working in the zone. And then at the end, you talk with them about, here are the places where you're really effective. Here are the places that you didn't realize that you're sabotaging your effectiveness. And you go over, how do you want to show up? How can we take what we learn from these competencies and these places where you're sabotaging yourself and create a plan?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that you're not just talking about competence and then incompetence. You're really talking about competence and then the unconscious way that people either don't capitalize on competence or the way they sabotage themselves by doing things they didn't realize were getting in the way of their competence. That's a much different paradigm. And so when people see that, it really becomes, where are you motivated to then address these things? And so I'm not trying to say, hey, there's this standard for leadership out there, and you need to now take your profile and then go be this type of leader. I think that's wrong. The question is this is who you are. Now, which competencies do you want to get the most joy and motivation from, and how do you double down on those? And so we may find, we may find up to 15 themes of leadership, and they'll have some degree of self-sabotage. Well, the question then is like, which ones do you want to address? Which ones are going to have the highest return on investment? Which ones are going to allow you to lead immediately at a higher level? And so when people get the Real Leadership ID, they can lead the same day at a more effective level. They can grow their leadership influence that same day. But then the development plan becomes much more targeted. Like an example of that is when someone gets some feedback that says, hey, you're a really good communicator in the sense that you can drive vision. People are drawn to you. People want to follow your vision. The problem is that you don't listen well. And so when someone else is bringing you some insight, you don't really try to understand that insight. And so two things that happen. One is your strategy is not as good as it could be, but you alienate yourself from the people who actually have really, really good insight that can help you with that strategic decision. And so that is a very simple thing. So the development plan on that is, what are best practices around listening? Well, there are actual skill sets and trainings that you could do to become a better listener. It's not just like, I'm going to become a better listener. No, there's actually a practical way of doing it. There's a structure to how you listen. And when you follow that process, you get much richer information and you can be much more effective. Well, you can do that in a weekend. And this was one of my clients. This was his thing. He could become a better leader in a very short amount of time. And it's just, he was blind to the fact that the people he worked with didn't think that he was a good listener, even though he really cared about what they had to say. It was a disconnect in body language and process. All of the things he could solve really quickly. So very, very shortly, his impact in the organization grew significantly.
And so what you do is you create a Real Leadership ID profile for your clients, and then you create an action plan where, what are your 3 Ds that you practice with them?
Yeah. So, and it is the most important one is the first one. It is, I know my competence. And so I'm going to double down on those competencies. I'm going to double down knowing that's how I make the biggest impact on the organization. I may have all these things that I do, but if I focus on these 3, we're going to make more revenue. We're going to drive the business forward. I'm going to have a bigger impact. So doubling down is really important. The other 2 are what are the things I need to delegate? I need to get off of my plate. And when you're talking with a senior executive, they have discretion on what they can delegate. And so sometimes they're holding on to responsibilities that they don't need to hold on to. There's someone else that's better in the organization who can handle those. And it's so strategically delegating is important, not delegating the things I just don't want to do, but delegating the things that I can do, but there would be someone else better in the organization that would allow me to have more time to double down on my competencies. So then there's delegate. So double down, delegate. And the last one is develop. There's some things that you have to develop as an executive. You cannot not do those things. For example, if you're the senior executive and you are an introvert and you have to learn how to do public speaking, you can actually learn that. And so you create a development plan to develop on those key skills. And that is not something I dictate. It's something that my clients will go, based on my organization, based on what's happening, here's how we're going to accomplish those 3 things. I'm going to double down, delegate some things. I'm going to develop certain skills. Again, that are going to have a high immediate return on investment. That's the deal. We call it return on leadership. If you get better at leading, that investment will have a direct benefit. Your return on leadership is a return on investment to your organization.
That's great. After you have the action plan and you're either deciding what to double down on, develop, or delegate, you're also teaching them that this process doesn't end. Yep. What's that last piece that you teach them?
Yeah. So we talk about trying to move closer and closer to your sweet spot. And the sweet spot is the overlap between your conscious competencies, your joy and motivation, and the value you create. And it's really important that the value you create is the value you create for others. It's not the value you create for yourself. Those are hobbies. The things that actually drive value in the business world are things that your customers value, your employees value. So it's very simple. As you want to move closer and closer to that sweet spot, the way that you do that is we call it the feedback code. It's developing a regular rhythm of taking ownership and being proactive about going and getting the feedback you need to be a stronger leader. And so you're contributing, you get some feedback, you get clear about what that feedback tells you. That allows you to be really confident about who you are and how you do stuff. And you make confident decisions to take more risk, to change how you engage in leadership. And then you apply that and you contribute at a higher level. And then as you do that, let's say you're going to get better at facilitating executive meetings. You try to say, I'm going to delegate certain parts of the meeting. I'm going to be more quiet. I'm going to change the way I do it. Right after that meeting, instead of going, well, I think that went okay, you actually go and say, wait, I'm going to pull a couple people aside and I'm going to go, hey, I was trying to change the way I engaged because of the feedback I got. I was trying to do some different things. How did that come off? How did that land with you? Was that good? Was that effective? Did you feel like it was a better result, a better conversation? And they'll give you feedback and they'll go like, I'll tell you. And then you go, okay, well, hey, this worked. This didn't work. Okay, I get clear on that. Now I'm going to make some different decisions. I'm going to go, oh, hey, next time I'm going to do this. And as you do that, you become better at that skill. You could do better at one-on-ones. You could do better at a sales presentation. Whatever you're trying to develop, what you do is immediately after you make a change or an adjustment, you follow the feedback code by actually intentionally going and getting feedback, not waiting for it to come to you. I mean, if you're a senior executive, people aren't going to come volunteer feedback to you. You have too much positional power and authority. They're not going to do that. And so you have to go get that from people you know are going to tell you the truth. And you follow that over and over, daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. You're always trying to pull in information because it gives you such a good advantage to becoming the strongest leader you can be.
Coming full circle and going back to your story, you're working in a job that you could effectively do, but it was very unfulfilling, provided very little joy. Where you were and where you are now and why that is, what would you say?
Oh, it's like night and day. Even when we're going through hard things, even when we're doing things that are have to things, right? Stuff I don't enjoy, because it's enabling me to spend the majority of my time doing what I love doing, it works. It's actually brings me joy. The other thing is that the more I focus on what I'm good at, the more value that my clients get, the more it brings me joy, the more there's value to their organizations. That fills me up. I never need to retire. I don't need to retire. I'm enjoying what I do so much. And the key thing is I'm not drinking my own Kool-Aid here. I'm actually talking with customers who are telling me all the time, this worked, this didn't work. So I constantly get feedback. So I would say I went from being like super stressed and super dissatisfied to being in a situation where I enjoy what I do. I know because I've seen the results that I have a lot to offer. And I get to partner with leaders who are adjusting their growth curve, impacting the organizations at a much higher level. And so it's a win-win. It's so good.
And I'll say, being your wife and your business partner, you just show up differently in life. It's not just work. Like, you're a better dad, a better husband, a better friend. You're more comfortable in your own skin. You just have so much more joy. And as a result, I think you pour more into other people than you ever have before. You've always wanted to do that, but you have the energy and the enthusiasm to do it.
Yeah. And I would say, like, there was a disconnect earlier in my career of like, I'm this person at work and I'm this person at home. And what I found is that I'm the same person when I'm with a client that I am with our kids. I'm the same person when I'm engaging a neighbor or engaging someone else in our church, or I'm stepping towards them, I'm encouraging them. I'm doing the same thing wherever I'm at. And because I'm very clear about that, I have this kind of sense of humility and confidence to just relax, just be me. And I can tell a difference between how I engage our kids. I'm a much better father than I think I was. I bring a lot more engagement and connection in marriage. I'm much more intentional about friendships. I'm an introvert. I don't need a ton of friendships, but the friendships that I have, I really can invest myself in a significant way because I know what I bring to that relationship. Early in my life, I was always trying to be like my brothers. I was always trying to be like somebody else I admired. And it's like, that's not who I am. And so I show up inauthentically in those places. And the funny thing is every client I work with, they'll talk about the business results, but then they'll talk about their wife or their husband, or then they'll talk about their kids. Who you are as an individual is who you are as an individual. And you're not a different person. And the clearer you are about who you are at work and who you are as a professional, the clearer you're going to be about the other stuff. And it just connects your life. It makes you free. It makes you confident. Not confidence because you're just making yourself confident, but confidence because you're really clear. When I finally took the risk to make this my job, make this my life, bet the farm on this business. It's beautiful. Thanks to you for joining me in the process and believing in it. And I tell people all the time, I got the greatest job in the world. It's not the greatest job for you. You don't want my job. Other people out here don't want my job. It's the best job for me. And it is extremely rewarding.
I know. You help them
Yeah.
believe in who they are before they believe in it themselves, and that they're going to walk away empowered to go and do great things because of having worked with you and engaged with you.
Yeah. And kind of one thing I want to say, which is interesting, I'm a perfectionist at heart. And so I was never good enough. And so I always had these voices in my head that were highly critical. And what this has allowed me to do, and I think what it allows my clients to do, is when you have all those messages in your head coming from coaches and people you knew when you were a kid and teachers and professors and people who managed you, plus you have all the negative stuff you think about yourself. What this helps you do is dial down and turn down the voices that are not true and dial up the voices that are true, because you have clarity from people who care about you. And so that allowed me to go, I don't just enjoy this, I am good at this, and people value it. I'm going to step into that. For everyone who experiences it, they begin to hear those voices that are true louder than they hear the voices that are not true. I think this is common across human beings. Doesn't matter your faith, doesn't matter your education. You are a better leader than you think you are. You just don't know it. And you get in the way of your own leadership more than you think you do. There's some clients who've never worked with an executive coach before, and they're leading at a very high level. They don't know what they don't know. And they get a tremendous amount of value just because they're like, oh, wow, I can be better. My company can be more successful, all the way to the person who's like super frustrated, super stuck, working in a situation where the results aren't there and they just can't see their way. They need a partner, a thought partner that's confidential, that's going to invest in them. But I would say the key thing is that they have to be curious, and they have to go, hey, I really want to be a better leader so I can have a bigger impact on my organization. If you really want that, I guarantee it. I guarantee that's going to happen. And you're going to see things you've never seen before, and you're going to have clarity and confidence you've never had before.
Thank you, everybody, for listening in. If you're interested in learning more about the Real Leadership ID and you just want to have a conversation with Roger, you can go to our website, viveroleadership.com. It's Vivero leadership.com, and go to the Connect with Us page, and you can schedule a call with Roger. There is no obligation to work with him, but start a conversation. He can find out a little bit more about what situation you're facing and see if working with him would be a fit. And then there's lots of other ways that you can work with Roger. We do manager training. We do in-house Real Leadership IDs. If you want to invest in your employees, that's something we can do. Or Roger can come and speak with your employees or your clients. Just reach out on the contact page, and we'd love to talk with you and begin the conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to No More Carbon Copies. If today's episode challenged your thinking or sparked a new idea, we'd love for you to share it or leave a review. We'll see you next time. Until then, lead true.